When in doubt, choose a lower heart rate because you can't go wrong by doing that. So it takes you an extra month to break a PR in your runs. You're going to be a lot healthier for it, and you're going to break more PRs in the future.
Dr. Phil Maffetone is one of the most influential voices in endurance sports and human performance, known for creating the MAF method and the MAF 180 formula, a simple but powerful approach to building aerobic fitness that has helped runners, triathletes, and everyday athletes get faster at a lower heart rate for decades.
You put on a heart monitor, you go out, and during your workout, you're thinking, this can't be right. This is so slow. I have to walk the hills. No, what you found is your aerobic system is at that level. That's how bad you are, aerobically speaking. Your fat burning is here. No wonder you're accumulating excess body fat. And no wonder why you're not getting faster. You want to bring your aerobic system up higher, develop it really well. You'll burn off the excess body fat. And because you're burning more fat for energy, you'll have more energy for running. Therefore, you could run faster at the same aerobic heart rate, but also at the same anaerobic heart rate during a race. So people who get faster aerobically also improve their running speed.
In this episode, we unpack how the MAF 180 formula was developed, how it relates to modern concepts like Zone 2, aerobic threshold, and lactate threshold, and how to properly apply the MAF method so you can run faster at a lower heart rate. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Dr. Phil Maffetone on the Endurance Lab podcast. People come into the sport of running or aerobic training every day. They're new to it and they discover about you and they discover the MAF 180 formula. And because it's so simple and because of its popularity, it's still relevant today, I think, as it was 40 years ago, because I don't think in the lens of evolution, the human physiology has changed in 40 years. So it's pretty much the same kind of human.
Yes, has no change at all. We're still the same human beings. And so lucky for me, I don't have to keep modifying things.
Yeah, but you might do like the James Taylor thing where you have to keep singing the same song over and over again.
Hey, I don't mind doing that. And I tweak it. And so does James. He tweaks things a little bit. And they're always better. When I teach creative songwriting, I talk about, get the song out. It's already in your head. You just have to get it out. Let it flow out. Don't let anything interfere with your life. The song will flow out. And once you've done that, maybe it takes 5 minutes. Now you can tweak, little tweaks. And I call it be like Leonard. Leonard Cohen was known to tweak his lyrics for weeks and months and years. So we do that. Dylan has done that, when he plays out, eventually he says, oh, this should be the red ruby ring, not just the ring. And so, he changes it and it kind of sounds better. I don't know why, but we can always make things better. That's, I think, the bottom line with that.
That's for sure. Could you take us back? Was it 45 years ago where you came up with this formula?
God, you're making me feel old now. Am I there yet?
No. You look great, by the way.
Thank you.
Was it the 80s, if I remember correctly?
It was the late 70s when I started.
Wow.
I began practice in 77 and I was in the New York City suburbs. So the running boom was booming at that point. And so I saw a lot of injured runners. And so a lot of what I did in terms of my clinical approach was tailored to runners because that's mostly what I had. And that would eventually change. But it was a tough time because the high mileage trend was building up, getting really obnoxious, by the early 80s. The high carb trend was booming. Protein was bad, fat was bad.
Yeah.
And here I was. Yeah. I was like an outcast, talking about reducing carbs, not eating any refined carbohydrate, eat healthy fats. We need protein. Runners especially need protein. And the whole idea of training slow to run fast, training slow to race fast. What a weird dude I was. And I got a lot of bad press. I got a lot of people who got angry with me. I don't know, their egos could not handle someone who was professional and making recommendations based on individuals rather than follow the crowd. I had an anti-herd mentality. So I didn't want you to follow the crowd. I wanted you to be an individual. And here was a way you could do that.
Yeah, well, 40 years or 45 years later, you are the man. And this formula is what everybody uses. Well, at least I did. And it's been very helpful for me. But if you can tell us at that time, how did you actually develop the MAF formula? And what kind of physiological markers were you aiming to capture with it? Or what was the goal?
Well, the goal was easy. I learned early on that runners, not just runners, but people who exercised were sacrificing their health for more fitness. And I was into healthcare. I wanted to help people get healthy. And here come all these competitive runners early on, and then cyclists and swimmers and basketball players and soccer, later on. But in the beginning, here were all these runners willing to sacrifice their health, willing to get injured and sick. And unfortunately, some of them die to get better, to get faster. And that was not acceptable for me. And it got to the point where I would not see a person and I would actually say, look, you're getting hurt. You're getting sick. You would have been better off sitting on the couch watching TV as a couch potato rather than getting into running, because look what you've done to yourself. And they kind of, their attitude was like, well, I'm a warrior and this is, so I had to train people to think about their health and fitness. And I said, look, you should be able to get fit enough to run your best, reach your human potential while still being healthy. So that was the approach I took, and it was very individualized, and I didn't have a formula then. Early on, I used the 220 formula and quickly realized that was a terrible thing. There was no scientific evidence for it. And so my approach was to figure out the level of training that somebody could do without getting unhealthy, but still get faster. And I did that for, 2-3 years. And it was a clinical process. I would talk to the patient for a while. I'd go to the track and I'd watch them run around. I got a really crude heart monitor that were used in hospitals, that only gave you the heart rate. And so I had some objective indicator, the heart rate. And I compared their, for example, their gait and their heart rate. And I noticed that their gait was better when their heart rate was lower. Not too low, but lower than where they were normally training, where they had an irregular gait. That's why they got injured so often. One day I was lecturing somewhere and I was talking about that, what we're talking about now. And someone raised their hand and said, how can we do that? I was a little embarrassed because I didn't have an answer. And I went home and I thought there must be a formula, because this is human in endeavor. This is activity. This is a logical thing. I'm not doing anything mystical or magical. I'm following a protocol. I'm looking at factors from a health standpoint, factors from a fitness standpoint, putting them all together and coming up with a heart rate for them specifically. Well, how could I do that with a formula? And I won't bore you, but, long story, the 180 minus the age plus the modifications is what came out of that. And I tweaked it a little bit early on, but the only tweaks I've made relatively recently, are the terms that I added to those 4 categories. I added over fat, and I added, I think I added the first stage of overtraining in one of the categories, and then more serious overtraining in the other category. So it's very, very similar to what it was, because it worked. And what was interesting is I knew what I was trying to do, but I didn't have the equipment to measure things other than a heart monitor. And eventually, as more equipment became available in my area, like in New York City, I was able to get into a lab and measure people on the treadmill. I was able to see that yes, this heart rate that I'm finding in these individuals is actually allowing them to burn a high level of fat and a lower level of glucose. And it was surprising that the athletes who were trained that way over the months and years, even at maximum pace on the treadmill, running at your max, they were still burning a relatively high amount of fat, which was really quite amazing. So the laboratory evaluations started coming in, and people started sending me stuff from their labs about, hey, look at the measures we found using your formula. It corresponds to, maximum fat burning and lactate. It's called aerobic threshold. Most people don't even know about aerobic threshold because anaerobic threshold is the hype, even though most people don't know what that is. But aerobic threshold is that 180 minus the age with the modifications.
So at the time when you developed the formula, you had no blood lactate testing, you didn't have gas exchange via indirect calorimetry, you didn't have any of that, but you came up with the formula. And you only, how would I say, the formula was only justified when this technologies came about and you could use these technologies. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you come out with the formula if you didn't have all this equipment?
I want to say I don't know, but I do know it was an intuitive thing. It was a creative thing. I looked at the gait, the human gait, I looked at how were these people training beforehand? What is their state of health now? And a lot of times I would pick a number, a heart rate for them to train at, and I would test them again in a month. And if I didn't see some improvement, like pace, then I thought, well, I've got too high a number and we would reduce it. And that's when I decided, oh, hey, we could use this as a test too. It's called the MAF test, which is really your proof. Have you gotten better in the last month or two training at this so-called lower heart rate? It's not a lower heart rate. It's a different heart rate. And have you gotten better? Well, if in a month or certainly by 2 months, you're not faster at the same heart rate, then something is wrong. And that something is often you're using too high of a heart rate. And, the formula, it's amazing how people cheat on the formula, how they rationalize cheating on the formula. And I'm waiting to hear from the guy who sent me an email years ago. It was like 7 or 8, 10 years ago, maybe. And he said, I don't understand. I'm using the 180 formula just like you prescribed. I put myself in, in the fastest category because I ran track in high school. I said, no, that's not one of the options. So it's a thing where you have to be honest with yourself. And that's a prerequisite for being a great athlete, being honest with yourself. When you go out and you're not feeling good, or there's some little tweak in your body, you have to be honest and say, something's not right. I've got to slow down, or maybe I need a day off, whatever. So there's a lot of creativity involved in this. And I have to say, I think what happened in my case is, I was lucky a little bit. And two, I think the whole thing came down to being logical. In the clinical sciences, we know that doing a basic consultation, talking to patients about their signs and symptoms, and then doing a basic physical exam brings, and this is true in all of the clinical arenas, brings a much higher level of accuracy to a diagnosis than just going into a hospital and getting all kinds of scans and blood tests. A lot more effective. So I think that rationale, that logic was part of what I was doing.
You said a while ago, or you mentioned aerobic threshold. That kind of correlates a little bit to what we know now as the first lactate threshold or the ventilatory threshold. And, with the popularity of zone 2 training, everyone's talking about zone 2 now, and that is kind of like at the first lactate threshold. And your blood lactate should be below or at about 2 millimolars per liter. And you said just now that the math formula lines up with aerobic threshold. So do you think that lines up with what people call zone 2 these days as well?
If you're over 40 and looking to improve your running without getting injured or risk overtraining, then simple structured training plans are the smartest way to progress. Yes, big flashy workouts, they look great on Strava, but they often leave us midlife runners too fatigued and unable to train for days. So consistency always beats intensity. This approach took me from a new runner to sub 20 minutes in the 5K, 40 minutes in the 10K, and a 305 marathon, all within just 2 years in my late 40s. If you want similar results, we offer structured training plans for the 5K, 10K, half, and full marathon, all built around specific goal finish times. Find yours through the link below.
I don't know about the zones. I wrote an article when I first started hearing about zones. It was years ago when it started to be a big thing. I don't read, I try and avoid social media. I don't read the junk magazines. Sometimes I miss out on things that are new until they show up, and then I realize they're not really new. They're just a rehash from old stuff. The zone thing. When I first heard it, I thought, this is funny, because there's a lot more zones. And so I wrote an article called 101 Zones, Training Zones, or something like that. And I think it's still out there. If you put that in and put my name in, you'll go right to it. When we start our workout, we have a lower heart rate. And if we warm up properly, we slowly raise that heart rate. And then we hit a level of, if we're training aerobically, we hit that MAF heart rate or that aerobic threshold, the lactate, however you want to relate to it. You hit that and then you maintain that. And then when you cool down, you do the opposite. You slowly reduce your heart rate over the last 15 minutes or so of the workout. So how many heart rate zones have you gone through?
Yeah.
A whole lot.
101.
So I don't like the zone, the 101. Exactly. I counted them. So I don't like cookbook formulas. I don't like one size fits all. I don't like herd mentality. And so when socially, when something is developed within a group, like a running community or a sports community, and they come up with these zones, everybody should do this zone, then everybody should, I wish it was that easy, because then we can teach monkeys how to train people. We don't have to, use evaluations and logic and think and, have a clinical approach.
Was the idea initially, when you developed the math formula, was that to emphasize fat metabolism and aerobic efficiency?
Yes, that was a big part of it.
Quick pause here. If you're enjoying this conversation so far, I just want to give you a bit of context around what we're building with the Endurance Lab podcast. From January 2026, we'll be releasing 3 podcast episodes each month. The whole premise of this show is to bring thoughtful, evidence-based conversations around nutrition, training, performance, and recovery, with those discussions shaped through the lens of long-term health and longevity for midlife runners and endurance athletes. So, if there are specific nuances within topics that you'd like me to explore more deeply, or certain guests that you'd like me to have on the show, leave them in the comments. I genuinely read all those comments, and I'll do my best to either reach out to the right experts or shape future episodes around your questions. Because ultimately, this podcast is about helping you understand the nuances so you can make better decisions in your own training and life. Alongside experts in endurance sports, from researchers and coaches to specialists in different areas of performance, we'll also be featuring masters athletes, people who've achieved meaningful performance breakthroughs later in life, to share their stories, the mistakes they've made, how their training has evolved with age, and the practical lessons they've learned along the way. So, if this kind of conversation resonates with you, consider subscribing and setting the notification bell to all so you'll be notified whenever a new episode goes live. Alright, let's get back to the conversation.
When you developed the math formula, was that to emphasize fat metabolism and aerobic efficiency?
Yes, that was a big part of it. It was it was a major part of it. And you know, we all grow up, we all, you know, when we study high school, then college, and then you know, later on, more advanced college, we all learn that the human body is a glucose-based system. And that's just a lot of crap. It's wrong. Where does that information come from? Well, I know where it comes from. The sugar industry wants us to think, oh, we're a sugar-based body. Therefore, if we eat a lot of sugar, we'll have a lot more energy. Well, it's just the opposite is true. And I read finally in McGardle's textbook, I think it was, he had a section called the aerobic system. And I thought, oh, I never heard of the aerobic system. What does that do? It burns fat for energy. Hey, what a deal. It not only burns fat, but it develops the aerobic muscle fibers, those so-called slow twitch fibers. And those fibers also support the body. They support our joints. They support all the soft tissues, the other soft tissues. They support the bones. And, you know, so if we develop that aerobic system, truly aerobic, not just a word we kick around, people don't know what it means, but the aerobic system and its aerobic muscle fibers, we support our physical body much better. So it makes sense that I would see someone's gait being a lot better when their heart rate was down in a good spot, like at the MAF heart rate, rather than just even a little bit higher. So, you know, and then the aerobic system has, you know, there's a lot of immune connections. And for a while, this is how stupid things got. For a while, you know, they being a lot of the people who talked about running and the running magazines talked about poor health as being normal. You know, it's a runner's flu. Well, I'm a runner. How cool it is that I got the flu. You know, come on. So the aerobic system really enhances the immune system. What a deal. And circulation. The aerobic system is also, you know, the aerobic muscles are called red muscles because of all their incredible circulation. So now we're going to improve circulation throughout the body and brain. And we're going to burn more fat, so we're not going to stress our blood sugar mechanism. We're not going to overproduce insulin. And again, the brain gets a lot of benefits from that. And
is fat burning or fat oxidation a driver of aerobic fitness, or is it the other way around, where it's more of a marker that the athlete is training at the correct intensity? How do you see that?
I think it goes both ways. I mean, the input into your body, which is what training is, has to be right. And so then it brings out those markers. The diet has to be right. Otherwise, you suppress fat burning, and now you don't have those good markers that we're looking for. So it's really one big, you know, we need to look at the big picture. It's one big thing. It's all these different parts. And I think someone asked me recently how I do the kinds of research, how I write the kinds of research papers I write. And I thought for a moment, and I realized, oh, what I normally do is what I did back in the day when I was coaching people. I connected the dots. This thing is connected to that thing, which is connected to this thing, connected to that thing, and that thing, and that thing. And if you can see that big picture, if you can connect the dots in yourself, you're going to be healthier and more fit and know what to do intuitively and break out of that unhealthy following the herd mentality. Because that's, you know, that is a social problem we have in everything that is being done. And social media has made that worse. We're all individuals and we all have a unique system. And so we don't do radically different things when we want to do the right thing. We do things that are a little different. You know, I train 3 beats higher than a guy who's my age because that's my individuality. But but don't abuse that natural idea of individuality. Don't tell me, well, your body needs a lot of sugar because you're an individual and you believe that.
You mentioned a bit, I think you mentioned it a bit earlier about runners misapplying the formula. What do you think is the way that most runners misapply it? Do they tend to add a few beats and try and rationalize that? Or what do you think is the most common misapplication of the formula?
It's pretty clear. You just look at the no pain, no gain society. And we have people that say, no, I can't run that slow. That can't be right because I'm an athlete and I'm macho and my friends run fast. So I'm getting this heart rate and it should be that heart rate. I just believe that. That's an emotional trauma that people go through. And you've been through it. You know what it's like to figure out the heart rate and say, okay, I'm going to do that. And you put on a heart monitor, you go out and during your workout, you're thinking, this can't be right. This is so slow. I have to walk the hills, No, what you found is your aerobic system is at that level. That's how bad you are, aerobically speaking. Your fat burning is here. No wonder you're accumulating excess body fat. And no wonder why you're not getting faster. You want to bring your aerobic system up higher, develop it really well. You'll burn off the excess body fat. And because you're burning more fat for energy, you'll have more energy for running. Therefore, you could run faster at the same heart rate, at the same aerobic heart rate, but also at the same anaerobic heart rate during a race. So people who get faster aerobically also improve their running speed.
Anaerobically, I guess. They also get faster and okay, yeah. On the note about someone hitting a hill and the heart rate going up, if that happens and our heart rates do climb and we slow down.
No, the answer is no.
Okay.
Sorry.
But what
if
it goes over and you slow down? Is how detrimental is that? Because what we see on the watch is a bit of a delayed reaction to what actually is happening.
Yes, there's a delayed reaction. So as soon as you see the heartbeat one beat higher or hear it, you slow down. And because there's a delay, it's not a big deal. But in the beginning, that's what people have to do. Eventually, which is really fascinating, eventually you use your brain more and more, and your brain becomes more aware of your body. And eventually you say, I know how to run at 146 heart rate. And you prove it because you're running along and you think, yeah, I'm right at 146. And you look at your watch and there you are, 146. It takes a while to do that. But now when you run up a hill, you know how to slow down to avoid going over while you're doing that.
Yeah, you kind of internalize it after a while and you get a feeling of, when you can go a bit faster.
That's brain development. That's developing intuition, which is going to help. Intuition itself will help your running. Our brain knows how to run a race. We just interfere with it consciously because we have all these no pain, no gain attitudes. We have all these people telling us, run as fast as you can coming off the starting line because the farther out you are, the sooner, they have all these stupid rationalizations. Let's use logic. What an idea.
What about factors like heat, caffeine, hydration status? All this can affect heart rate. So if someone lives in a tropical climate, they are going to struggle with keeping the heart rate that low compared to someone that's in a cool climate. Generally, the heart rate is going to be a bit lower at the same effort. How do people adjust for that, especially heat, when they want to train with the math method?
Yeah, I'll tell you what I did and what I noticed in the local people that I worked with in the New York City area, and that part of the world has a lot of really good runners, and a lot of beginners too, but they all responded the same way. In the winter and in the spring, the heat obviously was not an issue, but by June, by July, certainly, and most definitely by August, they call it up there the dog days of August, because the temperature is high, the humidity is high, and the barometric pressure is low. Those are three factors that will slow you down. I had to console people because they'd go out on a day that was 95 degrees and high humidity. High humidity means you're running through water. Yep. So of course it's going to slow you down. Low barometric pressure reduces oxygen uptake, so that's going to slow you down. And the temperature is a huge stress on the body. So you have to console people to slow down, train earlier in the morning, take an extra day off. But I learned that for the local people, in the month of August, for example, I would treat that as like as a rest period, like as an off season. Even if some of them had big races in the fall, which was not unusual, especially a marathon, it was like a tapering period where they were still training a fair amount, but they were getting enough rest in so that the weather didn't beat them down, which is what happens if you're not going to abide by Mother Nature.
But should they still stick to the number, like 180 minus
Without
the age?
a doubt, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
and if you have to
so
go
they
a
should
lot
just go
slower, yes. You could train earlier in the morning. You can maybe get a treadmill and train in your house where the temperatures are okay and the humidity is lower. But my experience is you're going to get the same effect if 140 is your heart rate for maximum aerobic function. Training at 140 is training at 140. If you're running up an incline and you're at 140, it's still 140. If you're training a lot slower because the temperature is too high, you're still training at 140. So you're going to get the benefits of 140 maximum aerobic heart rate training.
There's one of the guidelines that suggests subtracting 5 beats from the MAF heart rate for athletes that get colds or flus or some kind of infection more than twice a year. And if they're training at a competition, performance is regressing. But if someone is experiencing a few minor illnesses, but they're progressing with their MAF test results and they are still progressing in training, do they still subtract that 5 beats? I ask this because, like, for myself, I've got 2 boys, one's 11, one's 4. They go to school, and when someone in the class gets sick, all the boys get sick, and they bring it home. Sometimes I get ill, my wife gets ill, or both of us. So that just gets circulated around. So if someone's in my position, would they still have to subtract those 5 beats if they're progressing?
Probably, because you are getting sick, which means your immune system is down here instead of up here. It's not that your son is bringing germs home. It's that your immune system cannot fight those germs. A lot of other people, I never got sick. I saw a lot of kids in the early years, especially in practice. And I have a whole bunch of grandchildren now. And when they're sick, I don't get sick. I mean, I feel I'm taking care of myself. So if I get a cold or flu every 7 years, that's kind of typical. But yes, in response to your question, yes, you would lower the heart rate on a regular basis. But something you said was very, very important, which is if the MAF test is still improving. If your MAF test is improving, constantly improving, then whatever you're doing is working. That's
I asked that because my MAF has been improving over the last 2-3 years, but I do get sick more than twice a year.
Yeah, so now you have to think, okay, what does this mean? How do I individualize it? Should I reduce my training heart rate? Is my MAF test going to hit a plateau? Some of those are normal. You have to kind of take all that into consideration and decide what you want to do. But I will say that when in doubt, choose a lower heart rate because you can't go wrong by doing that. So it takes you an extra month to break a PR in your runs. You're going to be a lot healthier for it, and you're going to break more PRs in the future. So, be conservative. When in doubt, bring the heart rate to the low, like when you're doing the 180 formula and you're looking at those 4 options. If you're not sure, choose the one that gives you a lower training heart rate, because you can't go wrong with that. And if you want later on, you say, hey, my MAF tests are improving, and if your MAF tests are improving after a year or 2, you might be able to adjust your MAF because now you're healthier and you're no longer injured and so forth. So that all works out. And then also as you age, now your formula is a little different. I don't think that matters. I think after about 5 years, you might have to lower your heart rate a couple of beats because you're physiologically younger, even though you're chronologically older. But if you keep monitoring your MAF test, that will tell you everything.
That's like a marker.
It's a very good marker, very objective marker.
So the MAF method clearly fits within the low intensity realm of training. How do you view the higher intensity part, the split between low and high intensity? A lot of people train to the 80-20. How do you view the higher intensity part of that? Do you agree that it should be about 20% of an athlete's training volume? Or how would you adjust that as people age?
That's a good, 80-20 is good. The problem I have is that it's not 80-20 all year round, because you have to develop the aerobic system. If your aerobic system is suppressed, if you're not a good aerobic athlete, and the example I used before is you have too much body fat, you're not racing as well, you're not running as well as you'd like, and you have to build up that aerobic system. You have to do that without any anaerobic training, without any fast training above that MAF heart rate. And it also means no racing in that period. So that's called an aerobic base. You want to have that segment of an aerobic base where you only build your aerobic system. And in order to bring that aerobic system back up to a high level, it could take you 3 months, 4, 5 months. People who are really overtrained and are just a mess, it takes them 6 months. But what'll happen, and I've done this. I published a study on, by the way, the examples we talked about before with aerobic threshold and lactate and its relationship with MAF heart rate. I published all of that information in a journal. I don't remember if it's Sports Medicine, but if you put all those numbers in, all those terms in with my name, it should bring you to the journal. And there's a big chart in there that has all those things we talked about, aerobic threshold, anaerobics, and then here's the MAF heart rate threshold.
Okay.
The aerobic threshold. So going back to this example, we need a period of time strictly building the aerobic system in order to get us back to a good aerobic state of health. And that could be a period of 3 to 6 months. And the way you've built enough aerobic power, if I could use that word, that's what it is that your MAF test, you'll keep getting faster and faster. And at some point you'll hit a plateau. And that's kind of an ideal place to add speed work or add any anaerobic training or add racing. And I have taken people and strictly kept them on 3, 4, 5, 6 months of aerobic training, no speed work, and then throw them into a race. And in the study I did, 76% ran a personal best. These are seasoned runners who are running a personal best after aerobic only slow training. What a deal that is.
Yeah, what a deal that is. But I'm in a phase myself right now because it's winter. So, I go back to base training throughout the whole winter. Are strides allowed, like 10-second strides?
If we're going to do that, I like to do 7-second strides because it takes that long to start biochemically changing. But what's even better is for you to find some nice grades downward where you could run, because you're going to have to run faster at your MAF heart rate when you're running down a hill. So you don't want to overstride, but you want to seek out those courses where you're running a half a mile or a mile or whatever, downhill, not too steep, but a nice decline,
1.5%
where
gradient kind of thing.
Yeah, where your heart rate, because you're reducing your stress, physical stress, by running down. Your gravity stress is less. Now you have to run faster at your MAF heart rate, and that's a great thing. It'll give you more turnover. Don't overstride. It'll give you nice turnover. You'll still be aerobic. You won't feel like you've even had a workout. That's a good thing to do during this winter period, or any time you're building your base.
Okay, great. Or if someone's doing it indoors, you can kind of prop the treadmill, the rear of the treadmill.
If you have that kind of treadmill, yeah, that's perfect. And you'll go, if things are right, if your environment is right, you'll be going faster than you think. You'll be going maybe faster than you want to go. You'll say, wow, this is so fast, my heart rate's not high. It's a fun thing to do.
Can we pivot the conversation a bit to talk about diet? I know you're a huge advocate of a diet that's rich in vegetables, nuts, seeds, whole foods, healthy proteins, healthy fats. But in recent years, it's become very common for elite endurance athletes, particularly cyclists and triathletes, to be going or to be consuming in excess of 120 grams of carbs per hour during races and during training. And, this has been, or people are starting to follow that. How do you view the consumption of gels and sports drinks during long runs or during marathon racing if the diet is predominantly whole foods that is healthy the rest of, the day or the month? It's just when gels are used during training. How do you view that? Yeah,
there's a bunch of different questions in there. One of them is the assumption that we have a healthy athlete. Okay, if you're not a healthy athlete, you're going to have a hard time with your race. If we have a healthy athlete, the aerobic system is built up. You're burning a lot of fat for energy. Now, you need a lot less energy during the race because you're burning a lot of fat. The average lean athlete has enough fat, energy-wise, to take them hundreds of miles. What a great deal that is. Hey, let's tap into that energy during our race. And then now all we have to do is supplement with some glucose at a very low level, because we're getting so much energy from our stored fat because we burn fat. We've trained our aerobic system. Now we don't need much carbohydrate during the race. One thing that carbohydrate does during a race is it causes indigestion. It causes bloating, discomfort. It slows you down, diarrhea. These are all common things that come from carbohydrates. So wouldn't it be wonderful if we can eliminate all those gut problems? Because that by itself will give you a better race. There's a study that Noakes, my friend,
Tim Noakes.
I'm trying to think when it's coming. I don't know when it's coming, but anyway. So Tim recently has been writing up this study where he's showing that we need as little as 10 grams of carbohydrate per hour.
That's really interesting.
So that's 10.
Someone mentioned that to me a few days ago.
You mentioned 100.
That's 10%.
So now here's 10. I've never really recommended people consume a lot of carbohydrate in a race because they don't need it, because their aerobic system is working really well. And even certainly in a 10K, you don't need anything. But in a marathon, you're probably going to need something, but you're getting so much energy from fat, you don't need as much. So your carbohydrate intake during a marathon needs to be very little, and you have to train using that amount to see how you feel. But Tim's paper is going to be a real breakthrough, because the sport has been so influenced by the junk food lobbying companies, by the sugar lobbying, that we've just developed this tradition, which is wrong, that we need a lot of carbohydrates during a race. We need a lot of energy. And if we can get it from fat, now we only have to ingest a small amount every hour. You know, and for somebody, it may be 15 or 20 grams an hour, but not 100.
Yeah, that's
it's
really
amazing
interesting.
The gut problems that people have, it's so common that people think it's part of the game, being an athlete. I'm tough, I can handle the gut problems. You can't handle them. They slow you down.
Okay, so we shouldn't be
that's a big
consuming 100 grams of carbs for sure during a race.
Absolutely not.
Okay,
if you need
more
that
like
much,
10
something's
grams.
wrong. And that something is the result of having a bad diet to begin with. And so we have to, when I said, you know, let's assume that you have a good aerobic system, you cannot have a good aerobic system if you're eating junk food and you're eating sugar. Period. No matter how well you follow the 180 formula. The studies that I've done now for many, many years on excess body fat, about 80% of the world has excess body fat. And I know what people are thinking. Oh, well, I'm a runner. I don't have excess body fat. Really? You do. The numbers in the exercising population, even the professional athletes, the amount of excess body fat it's shamefully high, and we can control that. If we eliminate our excess body fat, number one, we're getting more energy from fat because now we're burning fat. Number two, we're losing weight. And as soon as you lose even a little bit of weight, your running performance improves.
Get faster, yeah.
So I recommend two things. One, eliminate all junk food, all refined carbohydrates. So that's sugar and refined flour, which is almost all the flour in the marketplace today. You eliminate all of that. So now the question is, how much natural carbohydrate can you eat? Healthy carbohydrates. So fruits and vegetables, lentils, honey. And the answer to that depends on how insulin resistant you are. The more insulin resistant you are, the less natural carbohydrates you can tolerate. And if you want to know if you're insulin resistant or not, check your body fat. Because if you have excess body fat, you're insulin resistant. And the best way to check body fat is with a tape measure around your waist at the level of your belly button. Your waist should be less than half your height. Don't cheat.
Don't suck it in it.
You want to cheat, do it in the morning. You're a little taller in the morning. It's like people getting on the scale like 3 times a day. Well, let's see, I lost a quarter pound. Your waist should be less than half your height. And if you're not, you're over fat, period.
Okay.
End of discussion.
Yeah.
Very, very accurate. Sure, you could do a DEXA scan, but how often can you do that?
What are your thoughts on fasted aerobic training? Like if someone is training with a math method, do you think doing it fasted is a good idea, or is that not a good idea?
I don't recommend it, because as soon as you wake up, your blood sugar will gradually get more unstable. And if your blood sugar in the middle of a run starts to crash, that's a bad thing. It's also a bad way to train your body. You want to train your body in the healthiest way. And if you have a little bit of healthy food before you go for a run, it shouldn't interfere with your gut, especially if it's a liquid. You know, I have some recipes called Phil's Fat Burning Coffee, where I have different things you blend up, and you've got some protein and some fat and the caffeine, and that's a great pre-workout first thing in the morning.
How do you view the ketogenic diet? Do you think if it's whole foods and healthy, do you think it's a good diet?
I hate the word diet. I don't want anybody following a diet, because that's a brainless way to eat. You follow this, it's Tuesday, I gotta eat, For millions of years, humans ate a ketogenic diet. They didn't think about it. They didn't plan it. It wasn't even called a diet. I want people to eat what's best for them. And if it's a diet that produces ketones in your urine, in the blood, fine. If you're insulin resistant, you want to change that quickly, you want to get rid of that fat quickly, go into ketosis. So I have something called the 2-week test. I think I mentioned that in the beginning. Things I developed early in my career that I realized were kind of creative. The MAF test is one, the 180 heart rate. And there's something called the 2-week test. And the 2-week test helps you individualize your diet, helps you become more intuitive. Should I eat this or not? Or should I eat part of that? And on the 2-week test, and you could look it up, it's all over.
I have a question about that actually.
You have to eliminate, all the refined carbohydrates, and then you have to reduce the high glycemic natural carbohydrates. So no fruit juice, no fruit, no lentils. So you're basically eating a ketogenic diet. I do have a 2-week test called the keto 2-week test. If you're really desperate to burn off body fat, do the keto 2-week test. I have a vegetarian 2-week test. The 2-week test is a test. It's not a diet. For 2 weeks, you eat this way. You monitor your signs and symptoms. You monitor your MAF test. And I've seen people, extreme examples are somebody does a 2-week test and now they're running a minute a mile faster at their MAF heart rate. What did we do? All we did was improve fat burning. We changed the respiratory quotient. We revved up the aerobic system very quickly. That's a way to do it.
On the 2-week test, I noticed that two of the foods to eliminate are foods like yogurt and kefir. Why is that? It was a bit surprising to me.
Because modern day commercial yogurt and kefir and the fermented products are not fermented long enough, because it's all about time and money. We can't ferment the yogurt too long because we need to sell it.
Okay.
So what you have is a product that still has a lot of lactose, which is a milk sugar, which is not the worst sugar to eat, but it's still a sugar. And during the 2-week test, you don't want to have any sugar.
Okay,
You
now
can't have
that
milk
explains.
for the same reason.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't have milk. You can have heavy cream.
Okay. Now that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay. No, because I ferment my own yogurt and I do a 36-hour fermentation, which is why I was thinking,
it comes out real thick.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's very nice and sour.
It comes out real thick because the bacteria in there gobble up more of the lactose, and so it gets thicker and it's more sour. It's like sour cream. I mean, I used to make sour cream and yogurt. You could hardly tell the difference. They were both very firm and very sour.
Yeah, very sour. Yeah, yeah. Can we talk a bit about the Maff Foundation course that you have available? Can you tell us a bit about it and who is it for?
I think the course is on hold. Maybe not. It may be still there.
It is there.
But we're redoing that. We're redoing that whole website.
Okay.
They are doing. I'm watching.
Okay.
Because I'm too busy writing music and writing comedy, and I'm still writing research papers, and I'm writing a fun research paper now that's talking about what we talked about earlier, the aerobic system, and how that affects sports across the board. So if you're a basketball player, if you're a baseball player, football, wherever in the world they call it football, it's all the aerobic system is going to help you immensely. And the fact that refined carbohydrates will kill the aerobic system. And then what we talked about with the consumption of carbohydrate during a soccer match or during, a baseball game. These are traditional things that people do without thinking of it. I mean, people drink these sugary drinks throughout the game or throughout the match when in fact, and they get the gut problems, when in fact they need a lot less. And if they build their aerobic system, now they have as much energy at the end of the match when a lot of teams win or lose the match, or win or lose the game. You want your players to have a high amount of energy. Most of them fatigue and their energy is low at that point. So I'm writing about that, and hopefully going to have that in the next month or so. Oh, the the video thing. Yeah, I think it's still there and you can get it, but we're kind of putting all of those things on hold for the moment.
Okay.
My articles don't even come out there. My articles come out on my other website, which is maffetonemusic.com. And so that's where you can see my latest stuff.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on, or any question I didn't ask that you think would be very important or helpful for the audience to hear?
We're out of time.
Yeah.
There's so many things. I mean, look at that obnoxiously big book of endurance training and racing. It's like this thick. I would never buy a book like that. Only kidding. I have a lot of free articles online that talk about this. But one thing we didn't really touch on, which is worth mentioning here, is that what is the goal? What is your goal? What do people want to do? Do they want to become a pro triathlete? Do they want to be the best in their age group? Do they just want to lose weight? There's one thing that has to be there when regardless of your goal, and that's that you have to have fun. This is supposed to be fun. You look at these runners on the highway as I drive by, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that person is not having fun. First of all, they shouldn't even be on a highway. So don't forget to have fun, please. Mm-hmm. I want to emphasize what you've said. This is all easy. This is really all easy. And if you think it's not, you're being influenced by the no pain, no gainers. You're being influenced by the media, which likes to hype things up. You're being influenced by the marketing hype from companies that want you to drink junk food and eat junk food. So it's really, really simple. So don't think it's complicated.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, so last question. What does endurance mean to you, Dr. Phil?
Endurance means what we just talked about. We can have fun for a long time. We could be healthy and fit for a long time. And it's not just our body, but our brain in particular, because our brain has a mechanism that enables it to fix itself much more than our body does. So we should have the best brain in our life on the day we die. That's how good the brain is. And so with a healthy brain, we're going to be a much better athlete. So endurance is that we can do this for a long, long time. That's what I plan on doing.
Yeah, yeah.
And we don't,
Thank you.
I hate when people say, are you retired? I have to close my ears. The word retire means waiting to die. No, I'm not retired. I've never retired. I'm about as busy as I've ever been in my life. We should have a passion for that, and passions never retire.
Thank you so much for your time. I would love to talk to you more about music, perhaps some other time later in the year. Maybe I can.
That would be great.
Twist your arm to invite you back.
I'll get up in the middle of the night to talk about music. It's
okay.
It's a
because I know that there's a chapter in your book
woke up with
about music influencing
I have a
performance.
whole book called Be Sharp.
Yeah, Be Sharp, right? It's a chapter about and the brain and performance and how music affects athletic performance as well. And yeah, maybe sometime we should talk about it.
It's amazing. Yes, I'd love to do that.
Okay. Well, I'll give a chance to some other guests to come on the show, and then I'll reach out to you maybe sometime later in the year. We can talk about that because,
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Usman. I appreciate it. This has been really great, and keep having fun.
Thank you. I learned so much from this conversation. Thank you so much for all the work that you do, and thanks for your time and for sharing all the insights and all the nuances. Thanks. Have a great day.
My pleasure.
If there were topics in this conversation that you'd like me to go deeper into with this guest, leave them in the comments. If there's enough interest, I'll invite the guest back onto the show and dedicate an episode to a deeper follow-up conversation. Thanks for watching all the way through, and I'll see you in the next episode.